Let's just pick up on the quote, and I'm not even going to try and deliver it like Nelson Mandela, but let me read it. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. Do you think the ANC government of today is willing to give everything for an ideal that they stand for?
Well, I think we must look at it in a context. I don't think in a democracy people will be making those statements.
Okay.
But what is also important is where you start the quote. If we are to be honest with history and honest with Mandela, he starts by saying, during my lifetime, I dedicated myself to the struggle of African people. And that is the centrality of the ANC. That's why when you look at all the proclamations about what the struggle was about, that it was about the liberation of black people in general and Africans in particular. So if we're now to look truly at Mandela, he'll be asking the question, where are the African people in terms of political liberation, in terms of economic liberation, in terms of cultural liberation? So the centrality of the African was always there in Mandela's engagement with struggle. So he's an embodiment of struggle, but also it is a direct struggle towards a decolonization, towards locating where black people are. Then the second part is the issue of the ideal, because they also talks about equal opportunities, where people live in harmony. So the question as we move forward is to ask, are there equal opportunities, or do we still have disparities in terms of opportunities? And these are the questions that the ANC must grapple with. But the issue of whether people are prepared to die for something, I do not think that in a democracy we should be asking those. People should not be dying for anything, because we have already achieved that ideal, at least at the political level.
Now let's talk about one of those questions that you raised now as far as African people are concerned and their situation under apartheid. 50 years since that speech was made in court. Has it really changed as you and I sit here today? Is it where Mandela would have wanted it?
Well, there have been major achievements. I mean, the fact that there's a freedom of movement, freedom of association, and even freedom to even challenge the ANC. I mean, if you look at the election campaigns, the intensity of those campaigns means that people have a sense of freedom, that they can actually choose who they want to be to represent. The struggle of Mandela was about the political liberation, but then he added, the ANC added the issue of economic liberation, because when one talks about freedom, you must have also freedom from want, freedom from fear. So to a certain extent, we've achieved some of those. But on economic liberation, we are far from that. And one must also locate Mandela in terms of his own role, because he was a president. And the challenges of Mandela were probably much more easier, because all he required and all he did was to provide hope and symbolism. But he did not deal with the issues of economic liberation. It was only Mbeki who introduced the language of reconciliation around the economy. Mandela dealt with a racial reconciliation, but as we know, that's on one part. To deal with economy, you're dealing with material interest. And that's why Mbeki's presidency was also very difficult.
As a final question to you, Prof, if I may, so when the ANC government says that 20 years into democracy, and I realize part of that was Nelson Mandela, is not enough time to fix all the errors and the mistakes of the past. Is that a fair comment from them?
It is fair, because issues of material interest are much more difficult. It is easier for people to embrace each other in a sports field. But when you start saying we now need to share these resources, when you have to deal with issues of land, 20 years is a very short time. But what is most important is the commitment that this country is moving towards addressing those issues. Because for as long as they're not addressed, there will continue to be issues of contestation within the nation.
You deserve to know more.
eNCA.com